Hello, everybody. This is Seth Haynes from Musician's Guide to Hustling.com, and I am really excited today to have the founder of violinists.com, which is a behemoth of a website for string players, Laurie Niles. Laurie, there's so much stuff I could introduce you as. Can you just give everyone a quick introduction to yourself, a little bit about your background and what it is that you do?
Well, sure. I'm a violinist, which you might have been able to guess. So I started with that, and I founded violinists.com about 20 years ago. 1996 is when we
Wow.
actually got the domain name. But at the time, websites were so different than they are now. So it's something that really evolved as the internet evolved and changed a lot along the way. I have a background in music and in journalism. So my undergraduate degree was in music, studying violin, and then a graduate degree in journalism. So I never really quite knew how I was going to put those things together.
Right.
People suggested being a music critic, and I really kind of hated that idea because being a critic sounded kind of mean and unsupportive. I don't know why.
Right.
Then when somebody mentioned the idea of arts journalism, I thought, well, I can kind of get my head around that, just kind of writing stories and covering things that musicians and violinists do. And then, violinist, I actually did work as a newspaper reporter, though, for a while, writing completely unrelated things, not about music. Anyway, so the internet allowed me to put those things together. So we've had violinist.com for about 20 years.
Wow.
And, it's been a place that the first thing we did was actually allow people to put their resumes up on site. So it was actually Facebook for violinists before
Oh,
Facebook.
wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, that was actually the first thing we did. The second thing we did was allow people to talk to each other on the discussion board. And it's been great. It's actually been humbling for me just to know how much I didn't know about the violin that I thought I did, or, to hear
Sure.
what other people had to say. And then also, the last thing actually was to start writing a blog. I actually had to ask my husband what a blog was when he suggested it. It was that long ago. People really didn't know what blogs were at the time. So,
Right.
so in recent years, the thing we've been trying to focus on heading forward is just to be a place that encourages excellence in every aspect of violin playing, of music education, we would like to be a place where people can find excellent practices in entrepreneurship, things like that. So,
Absolutely.
so going forward, we just want to hold up examples of excellence in all these different areas and encourage people. And then you asked me what kind of projects we have going right now.
Yeah, so like what are some of the new things that you guys have going on?
Yeah, well, some of the things, something that people might not know about is that we do have a directory. If you are a member of violinists.com, you can be in a free directory of teachers and a free directory of performers. So I think that can be helpful to string players, and really we welcome any string players. Even though we're violinists.com, there are people that are violists and cellists and bassists.
Yeah, of course.
So a directory of performers and of teachers. And then we have, we're kind of restarting our luthier directory. That's violin makers, and
Sure.
that one is a one-time paid entry, but then you can be in there for kind of a real low price. So those are the things. And then as far as what we're going to be writing about, we'll be writing about upcoming Isaac Stern Shanghai competition,
Okay.
and just all the things that we're always writing about.
Sure. Things going on in the violin world.
Things going on in the violin world, but also technique, music education. So we have those kinds of articles as well as newsy kinds of articles.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
hope
mean,
that answers.
it's such a cool resource. I mean, I think there are very few. I mean, there are very few kind of like peers, I guess, in the space like on the scale that you guys have created. So I think that's just such a fascinating thing. Um, yeah, 20 years. That's an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
That's a long game for sure. So one of the things I would love to kind of talk a little bit about your background in journalism and kind of how that's played a role in this whole process. So one of the things, so I know you have this book here, the violinists.com interviews, volume 1, which is volume 1 itself is almost 300 pages. So there's tons and tons of content here, and so you've interviewed people. I mean, like the list is just. I mean, it's like everybody. It's it's like the who's who of like violin soloists almost. I mean, there's Joshua Bell, there's Philip Quint, Sarah Chang, Hilary Hahn. There's conductors in here. So whenever you go to talk to some of these people, so like you're sitting down with an interview with some the next like hotshot solo violinist. How do you prepare for these interviews? Like, what does it actually look like whenever you start doing the research to figure out who they are, where they've been, what questions they've already been asked 100 times? And like, so what does your process look like when you're getting ready to sit down with some of these just like rock star musicians? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, definitely I do a lot of research. So there's obviously Google, but then there's I do a lot of reading on what they've been up to, what their recent project. Usually they want to talk to me because they have a recent project going on. So I figure out what that's all about. And then I guess I try not to worry too much about what they've been asked a million times.
Okay.
I mean, I actually do sometimes go back and well, let's see. I think the main thing is that I'm writing for readers.
Sure.
So trying to think about what my readers will be interested in hearing about. And also, I genuinely love this topic of the violin. Okay, so
Absolutely.
those are two things, that I start out with. And then once we get going, I think there's a lot to be said for listening to what they're saying. So sometimes the interview might take an unexpected turn because they'll say something and I'll say, wait, what do you mean by that?
Right,
Or
right.
that sounds kind of interesting. Recently I was speaking to Nicola Benedetti about her a new composition that was made for her by Wynton Marsalis. He wrote her a violin concerto, and she was talking about she was telling me kinds of things, that he was calling her about, a passage, and they'd be on the phone for 2 hours, and then I realized, wait, did you ever have this kind of involvement before? I mean, so we sort
Right.
of went into this side conversation about like exactly how much involvement there was, and, she went out and bought him 50 scores of violin concertos. I mean, it was
Wow.
like, yeah. And so I think we ended up having an interesting conversation about that. But I think really part of it is just to be really listening as well. But I'm not afraid to go back and ask, how old were you when you started playing the violin?
Of course.
Why did you start? Even though I know they've answered those questions before, but I think it opens. Even if they're just talking about their latest project, there was probably some genesis of that project that started really long time ago. So just kind of trying to get to the heart of, I think getting to the heart of why they're doing what they're doing, what they love about it, really. I guess it all goes back to that.
Sure. And is there anything specific that you look for? So like, I mean, so many of these soloists and things, there's just so much about them out there. I mean, is there something specific that you look for whenever you are doing this initial research? I mean, you Google, Hilary Hahn, and it's like, probably thousands of results and things. I mean, is there like a specific like kind of method you use to kind of find what you're looking for, or do you just kind of follow the path that just is there?
Sometimes most of the time I follow the path that's
Sure.
there. Yeah, because you have to, I think you have to be sort of honest and look for the truth behind anything, and sometimes I really do flounder around for a while in trying to figure out exactly where we're going to connect.
Right,
And
right.
where is that artist going to connect with my audience, and where are they going to connect with me, and how are we all going to connect together? Because if you do an interview where there's no connection, the other thing is that if I'm talking to them about their CD, I actually do listen to their CD.
Right, right, right,
If
right.
I'm talking to them about their book, I'm going to read their book. So there's a lot in that. Um, so yeah, just trying to be very honest with the process, really. As far as having a background as a journalist, I think it did. That was a helpful background to have. A lot of it was learning how to write, which is actually helpful in online journalism, believe it or not.
Yeah, right, right, right.
Really, it's just about organizing your thoughts and organizing other people's thoughts and gathering information, all those things. So,
Right. Yeah, that's super fascinating. So one of the things that I hear a lot from, and this is something I mean, I'm here I am doing these interviews. I'm always trying to improve myself. So what are some do you have any thoughts on like what are some ways to ask like better questions? So it's like if you ask a question one way, you might get a very kind of boring answer. But if you spin it just a little bit and you kind of reword it and reposition like the question, you can get a completely different response. And one of the things, just to contextualize this a little bit, one of the things people often say is, they're someone, let's say someone, like a lot of the people that watch this are trying to kind of get started or grow what they're already doing, and they don't know like what to say to someone whenever they meet them. Like they might figure out who they are, they might learn a little bit about them, but do you have any thoughts on like what are some ways that you kind of go about asking like better questions that like elicit a better response from people?
I think the best thing, and probably this goes for interpersonal skills too, is you know it, it's less about showing what you know about than it is about listening to what they have to say. So you can be very prepared. You don't want to answer the question for them, almost. I mean, because I get very, very prepared. Oftentimes I kind of know the answer to the question I'm asking. Uh,
Right.
but the point of an interview, and maybe even the point of a conversation, is to hear what they have to say about it.
Sure.
Um, so I think you just want to keep asking questions um, that come from listening. I think that listening is the key. I really, really do.
Right.
That more than anything, it's about um, being able to listen and not be thinking too hard about the next question. I mean, maybe you have a next question, but you might abandon it as well, if the conversation goes off in a different direction.
Sure, sure.
So, yeah, I feel like crafting the questions. Wow. Um, I mean, it's so much about connecting. It's so much about connecting. So those questions are just going to be, something maybe that you have on a piece of paper, but they're just a starting point. It's got to be
Totally.
like a conversation.
Totally.
You don't want to have too much of an agenda. I mean, I think even if you're at a gig and you're trying to get to know people, and maybe in the back of your mind is like, I want more gigs, right?
Sure,
And I
sure,
want to know
sure.
people that are going to get me more gigs, let's say.
Right.
But that's probably not the best way to connect to people. I think what you have to do is you go up to people, hey, well, where are you from? And you start and you try to find a connection.
Totally.
And boy, maybe your connection is going to be something completely bizarre that has nothing to do with this gig. That's probably the best connection you
Yeah,
could
that's
make.
probably the better way to go.
It is, even if you're connecting over like Game of Thrones, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
The latest video game that you played,
Yeah.
but actually sometimes if you go with that and continue with, and you create that relationship, you already have the connection that you're playing together, you know?
Sure.
So, um, and maybe that's still going to be the connection. Maybe it's going to be that you have, I don't know, the same kind of equipment, or I don't know what it is,
Yeah, yeah,
but I think you just have to be open to finding connections.
right. So what? So from like the like a like an interviewer or just conversationalist in general. So like, do you have any? So what happens if you're doing an interview and it's just like not gelling at all? Like, do you have any kind of like tricks and tips and things you do, or is it just? Do you have any like? Has that ever happened where you're interviewing someone and you're just like, man, this is like not landing at all. Like they're not really interested in being here.
Yeah.
They're not opening up. Like, what do you do in that situation if there is anything you can do?
Yeah, boy, if they're really not interested, I just don't even write the interview.
Really?
I mean, if it's really that bad, but if they're really not connecting, that's kind of why you have that a bunch of. Well, that's why you have your like 10 questions or whatever. It's just the ability to change gears. I teach. I'm also a violin teacher.
Okay.
I teach Suzuki violin, and so like occasionally, I teach all levels of students, but I'm pretty good with really little kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, just imagine a classroom full of 4 and 5 year olds, right? For like 10 5 year olds, let's say.
Right.
um, and communicating on any kind of level not going so well. We're all standing up doing something, so I just have a sit down and do something. Or we're singing, so I have a start clapping. Or we stand up and start playing. I feel like a conversation and an interview can sort of be like that. You have to just cultivate that ability to switch gears if you need to, and maybe like in a really radical way.
Sure.
Maybe something out of left field. Because you don't want to keep pursuing a line that's just kind of not working.
Right.
So hopefully you have something, some kind of backup question that just like is completely different.
Sure. So, whenever you've talked to all these people, I mean, in this volume one alone, there's like 30 different interviews. I think. I mean, there's a lot of them here. I mean,
Right.
are there any? And this is, I mean, I was going through the site and reading them, and they go back really far. There's tons and tons and tons of them. So, are there? I mean, you've spoken to like the people at like the tippy top of the game. Are there any like consistent like patterns or just things that you see that you just kind of hear over and over again that like some of these like top performers do that someone that like that anybody could learn from?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the people that are best at it, the most successful, are the ones that are just very, very true to what they want to do. They're not following somebody else's idea of what a career should be.
Sure.
So, and they're not afraid. Something I really, really did notice with like Hilary Hahn, she's not afraid to say, "Look, I'm taking a month off and doing this."
Hmm.
She plans. She's a planner. She she'll take that time that she needs for herself to stay sane and stay physically well. And
Yeah, totally.
somebody like David Garrett, he works out like every day. He does all these. He's a violinist who is very famous in Germany and does all these like stadium shows. And
Wow.
he's a little bit of a glamour guy, but he works out every day. And I think my impression was that it wasn't just to be like, that it's really actually for stamina. So he has the stamina to actually do a stadium show,
Sure.
and not get injured.
Totally.
I feel like the people who are really truly at the top, they take care of themselves. They also tend to be the ones who are expert communicators.
That's interesting.
I feel like it really helps, because if you are unable to explain why your project is the coolest thing in the world, it's very hard to promote that project. Even if you have a team that's helping you out, I think really, really, and they tend to be the ones that They schedule things. They're on time. They follow through. They're professional.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
have all those attributes of a professional.
Yeah.
Uh, you go to their website. It's it's organized. They've got pictures that you can use. They they can take a little bit of rocking the boat. I mean, the other thing is just you have to be patient. you know,
Sure.
Surround yourself with good people.
That's
I
really
don't know.
interesting. Yeah, that's really fascinating. I mean, that's one of my favorite. I don't know if you ever listened to or read like Tim Ferriss's podcast. I mean, a lot of people that have come on have referenced it, but he's. I don't, are you familiar with him at all?
I'm not, but
Oh, he's one of those guys that's just like amazing at everything he does. He's got like three best-selling books. He's like a rock star entrepreneur and investor. He's got a huge podcast. And one of the things that he does is he basically just interviews people that are just the best in the world at what they do. It could
mm,
be like chess prodigies or athletes or scientists or actors or entrepreneur, business leader, anything. I mean, it's anything and everything. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, the things that you just listed are things that consistently come up with those people as well. I mean, it's people like Tony Robbins and Jamie Foxx and like just these Arnold Schwarzenegger and just like these like over the top like hugely successful people. And I mean the characteristics you just rattle off, like taking care of themselves, being really organized, being like good communicators, they're all just that's that like almost every single one of them say that. So it's so interesting how that kind of like how that carries over. That's like those are like timeless skills, I think, that
yeah.
they have. No, I mean they have like nothing directly to do with like music necessarily, but they have everything to do with like the other pieces of the puzzle. So I think that's really fascinating.
Well, and I think also just trying to be yourself. What is that? I'm trying to think of that. There's a popular music thing right now. Just like um, I can't think of it right now, but trying to be me. Like I'm sorry if you're not being good at being you. I'm being me. But
Right, 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 right.
what am I thinking? My kids would laugh at me right now. Anyway, but to be yourself, I mean, look at somebody like Lindsay Sterling, who, people can be very critical of what she, like certain people who are looking for really high end violin playing might be very critical. I'm not really. I really admire this person who's just insisted on being herself.
I'm
She's
not
somebody
familiar
who
with
has
her. What does she do
Lindsay
for?
Sterling. Okay,
I'm not familiar
maybe
with
I
her.
describe Lindsay Sterling is a violinist who has done a lot of popular videos
Okay,
where
okay.
she kind of dances while she plays the violin and like sort of does these back bends and
Yeah, sure, sure,
kind
sure.
of dances through an ice castle while she's playing the
Okay,
violin, and she's
I
become
think I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
So she's become extraordinarily popular, and a lot of people are a little jealous of this. But
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because she's not exactly like top level violinist or top level dancer or whatever. But the thing is, her background is in film. She plays the violin. She's got this um, sort of a faith based thing going on as well. She's got and she's just put all these things that are just her into one package and just insisted on doing what she wanted to do with a lot of people, with a lot of naysayers, and has
Absolutely.
become extremely popular. And it's because she had a vision and just went with it. And so I think there's something to be said for, being able to know who you are. That's actually just so hard.
It is. I mean, I have trouble with that on my site. It's like I struggle with that a lot on my side. I have thoughts, opinions, and that a lot of people really disagree with me. A lot of like the like really more like kind of traditional, old school kind of like approach to things. A lot of people. I mean, I've gotten some real cack on it, and it's hard. It's a really challenging thing to do that. Like I struggle with it every time I hit post is like the scariest thing for me. I mean, it's really difficult because like
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I've gotten some like. So I mean, I've had people like I've got like dog piled on like Facebook groups and stuff, like like talking about what an awful idea this is that I have and things,
Yeah.
and it's really difficult. But one thing that's kind of to kind of piggyback on what you were saying is that and this is like something that's really big. I mean, I work in marketing is like kind of I do like consulting work, and so one of the things, and this is like really big in marketing, is like you can't. It's like almost having like being like having critics is like a positive thing because like if you're trying to please everybody, you'll please nobody, and
Right.
so like it's like there will always be a vocal minority of anything, especially the bigger it gets. So her name's Lindsay Sterling, right? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like you know when the bigger something gets, like the more the haters are going to come on board. I mean, God, look at somebody like Taylor Swift or something. I mean, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's
But I mean, oh, sorry, I don't mean
no, no, no,
to.
no. I was just gonna say, like, the bigger you are, the more successful it is. The larger the platform is you're building. The more that that's gonna be there. And I think that's a really interesting lesson. Sorry, what were you about to say? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say that, if you are true to yourself and you do the thing that you true like, you've really looked for the truth in your art, for lack of better way of saying it. But
Sure.
if you're doing a project, whatever that project is, maybe that project is a performance, maybe it's writing an article on a website, maybe that project is an album or whatever. But if you've found your own truth in it and you can stand by it and you feel good about it, then it's going to stand the test of time. I think you'll find 10 years down the road that you're still standing by it if
Right.
you're able to do that, though, and that's not easy. But you can't try to be somebody else or make somebody else's art. You have to make your own.
Yeah. That,
Um, so
that's a great message. I know that we're getting close to the end of our time here. Laurie, where can people learn more about you, your work, and what you have going on? I want to make sure, and I'll put all the links to everything in the show notes on my site.
sure. Well, there's just violinist.com.
Okay.
um, let's see. I guess I have. You know what? I have a page on violinist.com. Let me look here. Just my own page is. Gosh, I could just send it to you,
Yeah,
but
if you
but
just send me the link, I'll be sure to put in the notes there.
yeah, because there's a page that's like my profile page where you could see, you know, um, where you could see what I'm. You can see my bio, and it's got a sort of a blog roll. Um, and then there's always the link to my book.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I'll put that in there. And so the book for anyone that's watching is violinist.com interviews. There's just
it's Amazon. Very simple. But yeah.
yeah, I'll make sure to link to. I mean, anyone that's in like the orchestral world. I mean, there is a wealth of just fascinating stories in here to check out.
I tried to make it so that even if you're not a violinist or a musician, hopefully there's something interesting there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a horn player, and like I'm definitely not like a violin scholar. I mean, they were fascinating. I mean, there's it's really fascinating perspectives from like this industry that is just, I mean, there's just so much out there. I mean, it's a really like clean, simple resource to like learn a lot about like the different parts of it without having to scour the internet for hours and hours and hours. I mean, I think it's really a fascinating read, all the interviews and everything. Is there anything else? So we have your book, your site. Are you guys active on any social pages that
Yeah,
we can point people
so
to?
there's Facebook, violinist.com on Facebook. Um, I think it's violinist.com on Twitter as well. I should know this. I'm there constantly, but it's just, let's see, what is our handle on? It's just at violinist, I think,
Wow,
on Twitter.
at violinist. How about
Yeah,
that's cool.
we've been around a while.
Yeah,
And then we are on like Instagram, um, and well, Google Plus. I don't know who you.
right.
But mostly, it's Facebook and Twitter.
Awesome. I will link all of that below.
Just a second. What on? Yeah, yeah. See you later. I have two teenagers that drive, so when they run off with the car, it's nice when they tell me.
For sure. Well, Laurie, we're right at the end of our time here. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to just leave with the audience before we hop off here?
Well, I think it's great what you're doing. I think that it's an important thing for musicians to get to know how to run their business, how to do publicity, and how to promote themselves, and how to be professional. These
Absolutely.
things are so much more important than maybe we get. I don't know if we get that idea very much in music school. Some music schools are better than others,
For
but
sure.
if it's something that you didn't, if it's something that one hasn't had, then it's important to learn what it means to operate in a professional way. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Laurie Niles, everyone from violinists.com. Laurie, thank you so much for coming on today.
thanks, Seth.